So now we have the HTML template sorted, what I'd like to do is hook up our application now to the backend Firebase, and I've still kept the same project that we had before. Just because we're building a different project on the front end, it doesn't mean that we have to create a separate project for the back end every time we do that, especially when we're just learning and developing. So what I'm going to do is come down here again to get this snippet of code that we need, and I'm going to copy that. And again, we need to paste this inside our index file so that when we run our application on the front end, it knows how to connect to the back end and configure the application. So let's do that. Let's go to our index file, and I'm going to come right to the bottom, and above these scripts, let's paste this in. So paste that in and just scoot this in. So remember, this loads the entire library in, and we don't need all of the library, we just need a couple of the features. So the way we did this was by first of all saying load in Firebase-app, and that is the core base library that we need. And then we also loaded in the Firestore, so we say Firebase-Firestore like that. So now these are the only two things we need. And down here we can also initialize the database and store that reference in a variable so we can use it later on. To do that, create a constant. I'm going to call it db and set it equal to firebase.firestore like this. Now what I'm going to do is actually just test this in the browser to make sure we don't have any warnings or errors. So let's go to our console over here, and we can see there's no errors. I'll just refresh just in case, and still no errors. Awesome. So that's really all we need to do on the front end to connect to this back end. But in the back end, I do also want to create a chats collection. So I'm going to go to the database, and I'm going to create a new collection when this eventually loads called chats. Now, just before I do this, you don't have to create this collection yet if you don't want to. If we didn't create this collection and then later on at some point we try to add a document from the JavaScript to this collection, then when Firebase over here receives that request to add something to the chats collection, it's going to look at these collections and say, well, I don't actually see a chats collection. So what I'll do is I'll create one for you, and then I'll add that document in there. So that's what happens. We don't have to actually add the collection first of all, but I still am going to do this because I also want to add a couple of dummy documents. I was just letting you know that we don't have to manually create this every time. But anyway, let's call this chats. That's the collection name. And now it's asking for our first document in this chat. Now, the document ID we're going to leave blank because remember, if we do that, Firebase or Firestore automatically creates that unique ID for us. So we need a few different fields for each different chat document. The first thing is a message, which is going to be a string. So that's what a user actually types in. So I'll just say something like, hey guys. And then we also need another field. That is going to be the username, which in this case is going to be a Yoshi. And then we also need another field. That is going to be the room. Now, the room is whatever room a user is going to be in at that moment in time. Now, that could be general, gaming, music, or ninjas. Now, I'm just going to say for this one, general. And that's a string as well. And then finally, we need a created at property. And this is going to be when the message was first sent. So let me just set this to a timestamp now. And I'm going to set it to today's date. And I'll leave that blank. So now if we save this, it's going to create our first document inside this chat collection. So let's add one more document. Again, leave the ID field blank. We need a message, and that's going to be a string. This time it will be Yo Yoshi. And the next one is the username. And this time it's going to be Mario. Then we need, again, a room, which will be general. And then finally, created at. And this will be a timestamp. And again, I'll make it today's date. Okay, so save that. And now we have two documents over here. So now we have our database set up. We've got a bit of dummy data in that database. And we also have linked to the back end and initialized the database from our website on the front end. So in the next video, what we're going to do is start to set up a class for our chats.